All right, ladies and gentlemen, it's 9 o'clock. I thought we would give it a little more time if there was a line forming outside, but in the absence of such. They say the Inuit people had 20 different words for snow, but I don't think they had one for what happened yesterday, but that's stuff that came down, so really appreciate your digging yourselves out and coming out to do the important work for the town. So welcome to the 2022 official ballot referendum meeting for the town of Lee. We'll call the meeting to order. And it is our tradition to start with a flag pledge. So if you would join me, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Just a few housekeeping items. The exits are clearly marked here where we came in and to the rear. Bathrooms are right across the hallway here. Just by way of introductions, I'm the moderator, Don Quigley. My assistant moderator is Karen Long, right here. The Board of Selectmen on hand, we have Terry Brown, Chair. We have Scott Bugby, and we have Katrin Casper. And Katrin is maybe new to some of you, or we welcome her to the Board of Select Persons. And with all of her energy and enthusiasm, going to carry us forward these next couple of years. Our town administrator is Andy Robertson, right over here. Andy might be a new face to some of you as well. He's a farm boy, a lot of energy, done a lot of good work for us already in the town, so we welcome him on board as a new administrator. And of course, his administrative assistant, Denise Duval, right down here at the end. Our town clerk, Linda Reinhold, right over here, will be our scribe and secretary today, recording the minutes of the meeting. And her assistant, Deputy Clerk Liz Stone, the other end down here. So just to get things started, the purpose of this meeting is to explain, discuss, and debate each of the presented warrant articles put forth here by the town officials or by petition town voters. These articles may be amended or passed as written and move forward to the official ballot, which will be decided by voters in the second session at the polling place on March 8th in 2022. So for now, the polling place will be the safety complex in town. For voters, each member of the deliberative body who wishes to speak, amend, or vote on these articles should be previously registered voter of the town and should have checked in with the checklist supervisors at the main entrance to get a voter card. If you haven't checked in and got a voter card, you should do so now. And those persons will be allowed to vote and amend articles at the meeting and speak on issues. The moderator will allow others to speak if there's a general consensus that they contribute to the important information and understanding of each article. So for some rules, as moderator, I do not strictly conform to Robert's Rules of Order, rather try to guide the civil and orderly debate toward the productive rendering of these articles until such time as I am properly overruled by a majority of the voting body by appeal. Any person presenting an article or wishing to speak or amend an article is required to come to the microphone if able. Middle of the room. If you have a point of order or other concern, you may rise or speak from your seated position. By the way, if you want to slide your chairs together again a little bit, you can, or space them out a little bit. I think we have plenty of room to arrange the seating in some way that makes you comfortable here. So when you're recognized and you come to the microphone to speak on an issue and you're recognized by the moderator, then you will address the moderator until such time as the moderator then directs that to a select person or somebody who can provide more information on the topic. Warrant articles will be presented by the member of the select board or committee chair. The presenter will be recognized to be the first to speak on that article. The floor will then be open for consideration by the body. Motion to amend an article can be made by registered voters if seconded. The amendment can be discussed and voted. However, we are limited by New Hampshire RSA 40-13 that no article shall be amended to eliminate the subject matter of the article. So that's something we'll keep an eye on today. This restricts amendments to word changes which will help clarify the article in the positive or which will change the dollar amount to be appropriate. If the amendment is passed, the changes will appear on the ballot in March. The amendments should be handed in writing to the town clerk, Linda up here, so that we can discuss the amendment officially. When discussion is finished of the question on the amendment, moderator will call for a vote. If there is no amendment on the article, then the moderator will pass this article as written onto the official ballot. After the article is passed, there will be a motion made to restrict reconsideration of the article. We'll constrict it as well. If seconded, this will be voted on. This is a routine action which should follow each article to ensure that no changes can take place later in the meeting after other articles are presented or other voters leave the room. So that's the reason we do that. So if it's your pleasure at this time, we'll begin presentation of the warrant articles and their discussion. Starting with Article 1. This is the article to choose town officers. This is not subject to debate or amendment. We have a select person for a 3-year position, a treasurer for a 3-year position, moderator for a 2-year position, supervisor of the checklist for a 6-year position, trustee of the trust funds, a 3-year position, library trustees, 2 positions available for 3 years, cemetery trustees, 3-year position, and advisory budget committee, 2 spaces open for 3 years. And this will be decided by ballot vote at our March meeting. Warrant article number 2. We're going to ask Katrin Casper to read this article, although this is another article presented by the zoning ordinance. Okay, I missed a step here. Andy Robertson, our town administrator, is going to talk a little bit about some administrative rules, that is how we're going to proceed, and some definitions that we have to work with. So, Andy?
Thank you, Don. And some of this is a repeat of what Don has already.
I'm not sure your mic is on.
Is that better?
Yeah. Come on over to the podium.
Hey, good morning. And as I mentioned, some of this is a repeat of what Don has already gone over, but just basic guidelines regarding warrant articles and appropriation as well as definitions. Warrant articles may be amended subject to the following limitations. Warrant articles whose wording is prescribed by law shall not be amended. That would be warrant article 14 on today's warrant. Warrant articles as amended shall be placed on the official ballot for a final vote. No warrant article shall be amended to eliminate the subject matter of the article. The legislative body can make other changes. An amendment can change the dollar amount of an appropriation, for example. An appropriation is the amount of money authorized to be expended for a specific purpose. The amount of an appropriation may be amended, however, the purpose of the appropriation cannot be changed. No new purposes can be introduced that were not in the posted warrant or that were not disclosed or discussed at the budget hearing. Purpose, as defined by New Hampshire RSA 32:35, means a goal or aim to be accomplished through the expenditure of public funds. A line on the budget form posted with the warrant or the form submitted to the Department of Revenue Administration or an appropriation contained in a special warrant article shall be considered a single purpose. The definition of raise and appropriate, as defined by New Hampshire RSA 32:3, To raise indicates the source of the revenue. This means funding from any source of revenue, not just general taxation. And appropriate, to authorize the expenditure of a particular sum for a particular purpose, i.e. the authorization to expend municipal funds for a specific purpose. And those were the definitions and guidelines that I had. Thank you, Don.
Thank you, Andy. So we already briefly discussed Article 1, which has been moved to the official ballot, and warrant Article 2 is a zoning ordinance, and Katrin Casper has agreed to read this to us and explain a little bit about it.
Hello. Warrant Article 2 is about a zoning ordinance relative to Article, I apologize, 17, Section 2-B, semicolon 5-2 of the year 2019 zoning regulations, temporary signs. Are you in favor of the adoption of Amendment Number 1-2021 as proposed by the Select Board to remove the following language? 1 temporary sign per lot may be located on the owner's property for a period of 30 days prior to an election involving candidates for federal, state, or local office or an issue on the ballot. Majority vote is required. Deleted language is struck through, so that's what we can have. The reason this is important is because when we are doing the signs, we have a number of people that are running for office, and all those people you might want to be excited about or to sign up for, you have a right to represent. You don't have just the rule of one sign. So we're just updating our rules to match those of the state. Does anyone have any questions? Sorry, does anyone have any questions? Didn't realize I wasn't close enough.
Thank you, Katrin. This is not one that we can amend, but if anybody has any comments or wants to discuss it in any way, you may come to the microphone and identify yourselves and your address, and so if that's the case. Seeing no discussion, we're going to pass warrant Article 2 onto the official ballot in that direction. I'll instruct the clerk to do so. And the reason we're all here is for warrant Article 3, the operating budget. Scott Buckley's going to present that one. And so, welcome, Scott.
Thank you, Don. Good morning, everyone. Warrant Article Number 3, operating budget. Shall the town of Lee raise and appropriate as an operating budget, not including appropriations by special warrant articles and other appropriations voted separately, the amount set forth on the budget posted with the warrant, or as amended by vote of the first session, for the purposes set forth herein, totaling $4,882,913. Should this article be defeated, the default budget shall be $4,574,348, which is the same as last year with certain adjustments required by the previous action of the Select Board or by law. Or the governing body may hold one special meeting in accordance with RSA 40:13, sections 10 and 16, to take up the issue of a revised operating budget only. The Select Board recommends this article. Majority vote required.
Would you like to go through the other slide?
Yep. Everybody's got a handout? This is a lot of information, so. Everybody all set? All right. I won't go down through every single line, because you can all read. But we'll go through the changes. The FY23 operating budget highlights. Overall increase from 2022 is $308,564, which is a 6.3% change. And these are like the major increases. We didn't do small ones, but in terms of highlights. So government buildings increased by $100,052. Part of this increase was due to the new town office building, the rent and expenses associated with that. Personnel increased by $105,046. Part of that was salary increases and also in terms of benefits, health insurance, retirement, things like that. Highway increased by $93,290. Part of that was increased the cost of supplies, sand, salt, things like that. And fire rescue increased by $48,016. Police decreased by $22,903. Part of that was in terms of we put all the utilities in one particular department, so part of that was utilities being moved out of the police department. Solid waste decreased by $25,995. Parks and Recreation decreased by $14,500. Is that better? All right. Highway Department includes funding for an additional full-time employee. Fire Department budget includes a wage scale increase for personnel. Parks and Recreation budget does not include funding for Story Youth Association. Heritage and Agricultural Commission budgets were not funded at their request. And then we've got some graphs showing, of course, it keeps going up and up and up, which is not great.
Close to the microphone.
The budget amount keeps going up and up, which is not great. And then the next slide is in terms of source of where the revenue stuff comes from. Thing that is down in terms of revenue, we're projecting less money coming in for automobile registrations and things like that, as people are having a hard time finding cars anyways. So. And the next slide is the breakdown of the tax rate. That's the current tax rate. And the next section is how much money is in the capital reserve funds. And on the, almost next to the right-hand column is what's being proposed for this year in terms of going to each one of those funds. We'll get to those later on. And that's it. If anybody has any questions.
Thank you, Scott. Can you come to the microphone, please? And state your name and address for the record.
Paul, is this working?
Let's see. I don't know if the switch on top is on.
Hello? Thank you. Paul Koski, 46 Sniper Lane. I have a question relative to the IT figure in the budget. And I'm wearing two hats on this one. The Sustainability Committee, of which I'm currently chair, requested through our deliberations some money set aside for a server that would address communication needs for all committees and commissions in town. And I know that that went through the ABC, but I'm not sure what the status is of that. Relative to that, and referring to our committee meetings, it wasn't clear. Katrin Casper is the select board rep on our committee. It wasn't clear whether that money was in the budget or not in the budget. And subsequent to trying to establish that, where that money was, I did read something. This is probably just coming from me. In this case, that Cord Bloomquist, either in his capacity as a member of the ABC or as a private citizen, has suggested forming an IT committee. I would like to emphasize the importance of communication among committees and commissions and the need for a safe place for committees and commissions to conduct their business, and the need for storage that would take the burden off of individual members of committees, including me, and put all committee and commission data and information and communication in one place where it's easily accessible for the committees and commissions and also for the citizens. So that's a lot said. Can anybody just talk about what's in this IT figure and where we're going with this? Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Anybody from our select panel want to address the issue of the IT budget?
I know that Cord volunteered for that. I think, I don't want to speak for the other two, but I'm pretty sure that that's something we want to pursue. As far as I understand, Paul, there's no money in for that particular thing. Depending on how much it is, I think maybe we could find it someplace in there, maybe the contingency budget or something. But I think we would like to move forward with the IT proposal because I think it has merit. I agree with you, Paul. There needs to be some place where all those particular things need to stay. I'm with you, Paul. I have things at my house that probably, need to be someplace that the town has those, because I could get hit by a truck tomorrow. So I think that's appropriate.
Thank you, Scott. Does that answer your question, Paul? Well, before we go back to Paul, let's have another comment, please. Your name and address.
Tom Dronsfield, 75 Mass Road, Chief of Police. We're going to be replacing the server at the police department. I just talked to Steve, and he said that our old server would be adequate for their use.
Thank you. Does that help with clarification?
Paul Gazowski, 46 Planker Lane. Yes, it does. Thank you, Tom. It does help. I just want to point out, this is kind of awkward. If indeed we do form a committee to explore this, just that they will need some money to support their work. And we could, if we don't have that money in here, and I'm not sure what that figure would be, is there a place where we could find some money to support them? Otherwise, we lose a whole fiscal funding cycle on this matter. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Does anybody want to address that from the select board? Select Katrin will have an answer.
We do also have in the budget funding for a new server for the town offices as well. We have also been updating and replacing all of our computers, so we do have money that's going into IT changes. But we didn't have a dollar figure because we hadn't been able to find an answer yet. So as soon as we have a dollar figure, we can figure out how to go ahead and fund that. But we just need to know what that new thing is going to look like, which is why we need a committee to figure out the safest and best route going forward.
Thank you. The floor is open for discussion on Article 3.
Miss Regan, 19 Earl Drive. Just wondering on
Could
the,
you say your name again, please?
Miss Regan,
Okay, thank you.
just wondering on the town building, what is the rent per year and what are the plans or the status of the plans to get it permanent, town-owned building for that purpose, for the town offices?
Okay, so this question is relative to the budget item in Article 3.
Yes, 100,000.
Okay, thank you. Anybody on the select board want to talk about the rental?
The daily building we rent at a cost of $5,000 per month, so that's the cost for that particular expense. And the rest of your question, the select board and a whole bunch of different committees have been struggling with this for years. I know the select board, we've worked on different particular proposals. There's been committees that worked on different proposals. So that's something that we've yet to figure out. What we'd like to do, and this is just me, what we'd like to do is to propose something in terms of not something just for 1 year, something for multiple years, maybe we save for something. We have some issues in terms of what do we do with the town offices, the ones that are on Caleb Highway across from Sunny's. But also what do we do with the old town hall? What do we do with, the annex? What do we do with the historical society? There's a lot of questions. And of course, when you start looking at all those particular buildings, the dollars keep rising. So that's something that we've yet to figure out. We've proposed things in the past and the boarders have said no, because it's too expensive. So we're trying to see if we can take a staggered approach in terms of doing that. So, but that's my comments, not the board's.
Thanks, Scott. Floor remains open for discussion of Article 3.
think right now we're spending $60,000 on rent, and we also are about to be done with the bond for the public safety complex. There is a lot of opportunity to be using that money more wisely. So I think it's important that everyone stays really involved in this conversation and we get as much input as possible so we can move quickly and move forward with this.
Town buildings have certainly been a big issue, been with us for many years, as you all know, that are in this room. And it's a tough nut for us to crack, and I hope we can all keep working on it as a community, see if we can come up with some solutions in the future. But Article 3 is still open for discussion. Seeing no further discussion on Article 3, we'll pass Article 3 to the official ballot and hand it to the town clerk to present in March. Thank you. Article 4. Hold on a minute, hold on.
I'd make a motion to restrict further consideration of warrant article number, what are we on, 4? Three.
Second.
Thank you, Katrina. You should be doing that routinely for each article. I need to stay on track. Article 4, Fire Equipment Capital Reserve Fund.
You need a vote.
I apologize. All those in favor of restricting reconsideration of Article 3, please raise your voter card. All those opposed? Article 3 has passed. The motion to restrict reconsideration of Article 3 has passed. Now, we'll move on to Article 4.
Good morning, everybody. Jerry Brown. I will start with warrant Article 4, and then we're going to go through several articles relatively quickly, I hope. Warrant Article 4, Fire Equipment Capital Reserve Fund. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $175,000 to be deposited into the Fire Equipment Capital Reserve Fund. The Select Board recommends this article. Majority vote is required.
Thank you. Is there anything you'd like to say about Article 4?
No, it's pretty straightforward. This is a warrant article, because we're going to have another one that also applies to some of the fire equipment and the cistern and so on. Oh, I'm sorry. I apologize. So it's pretty straightforward. It's mainly for, as you can see. By the way, I forgot to say, as of 12/31/21, this fund has a balance of $798,000. So it's encumbered, a major portion of that money is already encumbered for the purchase of a fire truck per last year's vote. So right now it's just banking money for the acquisition of the new fire truck. And that's pretty much it.
Okay, but we have a discussion on Article 4. Just come to the microphone, please. State your name and address.
I'm Darren Keller, 20 Chestnut Way. So I've had the fortunate or unfortunate experience of where I live. Those who don't know where Chestnut Way is, you actually have to try to stay in Lee to get there. Come off Route 4, you pretty much have to go off Pinkham or kind of a back way because you'll end up going through Barrington or Madbury to get to our subdivision. And as a result, I often have to, and I have teenagers who have to access Route 4. They have to come on like every bad intersection in town you can think of, I have to deal with. And it weighs on me every day. I've also, because of those intersections, been a witness to or 3 or 4 cars back of watching major accidents on several incidents on 125 Route 4. And, you know, this is not an indictment on our fire department, but I have watched the police lightning fast be there and wait minutes and minutes. And when you're standing there, it's an eternity for that response. And, this gets into the deeper topic of, you look around this room, most of us were not spring chickens. Some of us have been a little bit too rambunctious at the dinner table. And what I see is, this town is being hollowed out because of the school system. We are supporting the younger generation to the point of the detriment of others in this. I'd like to see more support for the fire department and the police department. I'd like to see better response and put our money where our mouth is, and let's take care of the entire community, not just the school system. I'm going to propose that we increase this amount, and before anybody scoffs, I'll kind of give you my whole game plan here. I want to add 50,000 to Article 4, remove 50,000 off of Article 5, because I think that the fire department takes a precedence over buildings. We can still fund a portion of the building, but at the same time, I don't want to get into Article 5, but I can talk about it. I'm also a fiscal hawk. I want to keep this revenue neutral, but I think we're underfunding the other parts of our community because of the school. So if we're going to spend the money, put the money in Article 4, let's beef up our police and fire response. You know, I'd hate to see anybody in here watch your house burn to the ground and go, man, he was right.
Thank you. Before you leave, can you clearly state your amendment to the article?
I am proposing to raise this fund by an additional 50,000 for Article 4. I want to add 50,000 to this amount.
And you've presented that in writing to our town clerk?
I have.
And is there a second to this amendment? Second to the proposed amendment. Would you like to have the amendment read? Seeing no support for the amendment, it does not pass. Any other discussion for this article? Please.
Just some additional information for people. Down at the bottom it says significant portion of this balance is encumbered for the purchase of a fire truck per last year's vote. That amount is $650,000. So if you take the 650 off the 798, there's not too much money left in there. And fire trucks are very expensive. I've asked the chief if we can buy one that's not so shiny. He says, no, you can't do that. So more shiny means more expensive, maybe not. But just be aware that there's not very much money left in there, and the next fire truck is going to be expensive as well, just like this one. So just be aware of that.
Further discussion on Article 4.
John Tappan, 187 Stepping Stones Road. I'd just like to point out that this is a capital reserve fund. This is for the purchase of equipment. And I don't think that the response time of the fire department depends on the equipment that it has. I think the response time depends more on the personnel that it has. And that's in the budget.
Can you step closer to the microphone?
That's in the budget. The response time depends more on the personnel that the fire department has and not the equipment. And the personnel expenses are in the budget, not in the capital reserve fund.
Other discussion on Article 4. Seeing no further discussion on Article 4, I'll ask the town clerk to pass this article on to the official ballot. Would anybody like to make a motion to restrict reconsideration? Get me on the right path.
I would make a motion to restrict further consideration of warrant article number 4.
Second?
Second.
Did you get the second on that motion? All right, we have a motion to restrict reconsideration of Article 4. All those in favor, please raise your voter cards. All those opposed, raise your voter cards. The measure passes, so we will restrict reconsideration of Article 4. Thank you. Warrant Article 5, Town Buildings Capital Reserve Fund.
To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $100,000 to be deposited into the Town Buildings Capital Reserve Fund. The Select Board recommends this article, majority vote required. As of 12/31/21, this fund has a balance of $387,100.
Yes, I was just looking at that.
This money is actually coming from a different account, and we're just looking.
That we did.
What is the name of it? What is the name of it? So that should say that it's coming from the unassigned fund balance, so it's not new taxes being raised, it's just moving that money from the unassigned fund balance into this account. So we will have to amend that.
Where's the language? That was in there at one point.
Thank you. Open discussion on Article 5. Please, to the microphone.
Gary Keller, 20 Chestnut Way. So I think there's already been mention about, we kind of know the temperature in the room. The vote for the most recent the building in the, basically the megaplex, if you will, that was proposed was sound and deep. And my problem with this particular account, and I think voters made it loud and clear, and at least from, unfortunately a lot of them don't end up showing up at these meetings, but from talking with my neighbors, a lot of them felt like, okay, maybe I could chew on and live with the town hall, but then when you added on all the other stuff, I think it made it a lot less palatable to a lot of people. And what I see here with this capital building fund, and my concern is, voters have been pretty adamant and repeatedly about not supporting libraries and other things and blending it in with the town hall. And the reason why I can't support this article is because although I also would support, adding on and maybe doing something for a town hall, I don't support the other things. And so by doing this account the way you do it, my concern is you build up this account enough, and then what you do is you ultimately subvert the voting process, because then you bury in other things, eventually get it down so either you don't need a bond or some other, means, and then what ends up happening is voters don't really get a say, you just kind of decided for them. So if this fund was strictly for the building itself, for the town hall, no problem. But this freewheeling, kind of slush fund, I can't support. So I can support some money, but since this would probably include everything, I have made an amendment, and I am proposing we reduce this amount to $50,000.
That's your stated amendment. Do you have that in writing? Is there any support for the amendment? Any second? Seeing no second, the motion does not travel to amend. But the floor remains open for discussion of Article 5. Please, come to the microphone. Well, let's, it's okay, you're both tied getting to the floor. Please, right at the microphone.
Alexander Taylor, 30 Newtown Plains Road. I just wanted to ask a point of clarification. Is the authorization to expend from this capital reserve fund the select board or the voters?
So the question is the select board or the voters that chooses the appropriation?
Okay, thank you.
Select board is the answer. Would you speak, please?
Mr. Moderator, I would like to amend this particular article to read as follows: to see if the town will raise and appropriate the sum of $100,000 to be deposited into the Town Buildings Capital Reserve Fund, the sum to come from the unassigned fund balance, and no amount to be raised from general taxation. Oh, excuse
Would
me.
you please?
The Select Board recommends this article, no majority vote required.
So you have a copy of the... Okay, so we have a second on the amendment. Would anyone like to hear it restated? let's give Linda a minute to,
That slide was what was presented.
we have a motion to amend Article 5 on the floor, and a second from Karen Long in the back of the room. Any discussion on the motion to amend?
Ask, John Tappan, Stepping Stones Road, ask for the motion to be read again. The original says town will vote to raise and as the amended version was just read, I didn't hear the words vote to. I don't know if that's important.
Every word's important, I'm sure. Thank you, John. We'll research that and we'll have it read to the body here in a minute.
Don't read it. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $100,000 to be deposited into the town buildings capital reserve fund. This sum to come from the unassigned fund balance and no amount to be raised from general taxation. The board recommends this article, majority vote required.
Thank you. Is that clear? And what about our second for that motion to amend? Is that clear? Right, we have a motion to amend on the floor. Any discussion, further discussion of the motion to amend Article 5? Seeing no further discussion for the amendment, would we have all those in favor of the motion to amend? Raise your voter cards. Thank you. All those opposed to the amendment, raise your voter cards. The amendment passes. Is there any further discussion on warrant Article 5? Please.
Chris Regan, 19 Green Drive. Just wondering if you could talk about the unassigned fund balance, how much is in it, if it tends to kind of stay steady, or whether we're bringing it down, or generally the up and downs of that fund and where it stands.
Okay, somebody from the select board address that one.
We'll see if my memory and the town administrator's memory are the same. It's about $2.3 million at the moment. We just need to be aware also that out of that particular amount needs to come, we had a settlement with Fairpoint. So some money is going to be coming out of that particular fund for that particular purpose. Remember, and do you remember how much the Fairpoint is? It's like
200,000 and something, I don't know.
yeah. So that particular amount will come out of that fund balance. So the amount we've got to use is about 2.1 out.
Thank you. Does that answer the question? Please.
Hi, Jennifer Messiter, 147 Wadley Falls Road. Just some clarification, we're discussing 5, which is town buildings, and I also see Article 9, which is library buildings. So it seems that those two groups of buildings are separate. Correct? Okay, thank you.
That answers your question. The head nodding answers your question.
The answer is yes.
Okay, please.
Just want to make that clarification. These two funds, you could use this one for the library as well as the library fund, correct?
Yes, that is correct. This particular fund is for any town building, any building. The one that Jen was talking about is specifically for the library. Specifically, they cannot be used for any other structure. So.
Okay, another commenter?
Aaron Long, 16 Langley Drive. I think it's important that we understand what this fund is being used for. So typically it's done for maintenance and repairs, and within the trust fund, there are some requirements for what it can and cannot be used for. So the thought of the grand scheme of we're gonna put 1.2 million in this trust fund and build a new building isn't accurate based on what the trust fund is there to be used for. So just felt that was an important thing. And John, you can probably clarify a little more what exactly the requirements are within the trust fund for the expenditure of those dollars. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. Okay.
John Tappan, speaking as a trustee of trust funds for clarification. This is a capital.
Stay really close to the microphone.
This is a capital reserve fund. It is used for any capital expenses for town buildings. It is not used for maintenance and operation, but it is used for replacement of major systems, such as replacement of heating systems, air conditioning systems, re-roofing of buildings, repainting of buildings, as well as it can be used for additions to buildings or the construction of new buildings. When you add up all of the major systems that will need to be replaced over the next few years, next dozen years or so, it adds up to more than what is in the fund now. When you think about having to replace the roof on the public safety complex, when you drive by, take a look at that roof. It's a very expensive roof to replace.
Thank you.
Based on the previous question, I just wanted to clarify that I think it's important for voters to recognize. Look at the school system as an example. Oftentimes these accounts, there's a sticking point for something that struggles to pass by voters. These accounts are often created, they're built up, and then voters are completely subverted out of the process. That is a real concern of this account.
Thank you. Further discussion on Article 5.
And I'm not sure where this would come up in the meeting, so I figured I'd jump in. Hopefully the moderator will give me a little bit of discretion, just a little bit. One of the things that the town of Lee received this last year was some ARPA funds, a little over $200,000. The board has assigned those for different things around town to address things that need to be done in buildings. One of the things we did, which is one of the major things, in the fire department, we installed, or are going to install, an exhaust system so that the fumes from the vehicles and stuff gets pulled out, so it's safe for the particular fire department staff. We're going to do some work on the Historical Society, some ADA issues in terms of the ramp and things like that. So there's some things that we're going to do that are out of these federal monies that we've got. So otherwise, those particular things would be coming out of this particular fund. So we're trying to use those particular funds to help these one-time things that need to be addressed. So just wanted you to be aware of that. There's another $240,000 coming again. I think it's in July. So we're going to be looking at other things that need to be done around the town, so we can use those particular funds to fix these particular issues that we have in our town buildings.
Any other discussion on Article 5? Okay, we'll end discussion on Article 5, and we'll ask Article 5 to be, for the town clerk to pass Article 5 along to the official ballot as amended. Yes.
Oh, I make a motion to restrict further consideration of warrant article number 5.
Second. We have a motion to restrict reconsideration of Article 5, and it's seconded. All those in favor, please raise your voter cards. Those opposed, raise your voter card. The motion passes to restrict reconsideration. Article 6, Transfer Station Equipment Capital Reserve Fund. Is that you, Kerry?
That's me. I thought I would do it sitting down.
If you can get the microphone to work
Warrant Article 6, Transfer Station Equipment Capital Reserve Fund, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $78,000 to be deposited into the Transfer Station Equipment Capital Reserve Fund. The Select Board recommends this article. The majority vote is required. As of 12/31/21, this fund has a balance of $185,414.
Like to speak to the article?
I think it's pretty clear.
Okay.
But no, let me take a few comments. Number one, the transfer station is definitely a high usage facility relative to capital equipment. If you look at the compactors, all of the different heavy equipment, capital equipment that's required to maintain the transfer station, kind of as a brother to also the parks and roads and et cetera equipment. So it's very important that the equipment be maintained. It's very important that we keep it up to date. So we do highly recommend this warrant article.
Please.
Just another thing to let people know, I don't know if you've seen it in the e-crier, but our Department of Public Works Director came to the board with a proposal to purchase a roll-off truck. He was looking at cost in terms of the hauling that we get charged to haul our municipal solid waste and other things to different landfills and facilities. So we took some money out of this particular fund and a little bit out of the highway department to purchase this truck. After a period of 5 years, we'll be saving probably about $30,000 a year in terms of operating costs. His proposal includes the maintenance of it, fuel, and all that other kind of stuff. So we looked at that particular proposal and found merit in it, so just be aware of that. So this is not the usual amount that we'd be putting in. It's about $30,000 more, but we're paying that fund back over a period of 5 years. So the operating budget went down by about the $30,000, and we're putting the extra money back in to pay back for that particular purchase of that vehicle.
Thank you. That's warrant article 6. Open the floor for discussion on warrant article 6, please.
I'd just like to chime, Darren Keller, 20 Chestnut Way. I'd just like to put in my support for this article. I actually use this a fair amount, and I know for the people that work there, it's probably a thankless job. I'll just speak openly that I can only imagine, the conditions and cold and the time that they've been there are quite helpful. And then the only other thing is, and I'm not going to make an amendment, but I sure would like to put some big horn in there when on a busy Saturday when people don't pull up and make it go off. Do something.
That's a good idea. Thank you. Any other discussion of Article 6? Please.
Charlotte McLean, 51 Harvey Mill Road. The town has a long history of putting money away in advance of expenditures, and has historically been very supportive of that. But one of the things I've seen in past deliberative sessions is that someone, typically the department head, lays out a pretty significant level of detail about what's covered by the Capital Reserve Fund, what the state of existing equipment is, what future expenditures are, basically the lifespan of the equipment. If you're talking about a police cruiser, what the lifespan is, and when a new one is going to have to be purchased. And that usually is enough to get pretty close to unanimous support for this article. I'm not really hearing that level of detail today, and I'd like to hear it. Thank you.
Thank you. We have the department head of the transfer station here, as well as the select board. Maybe somebody'd like to speak just a little bit to answer that concern about more detail for this budget item. Steve Bullock.
So this warrant article covers all of the equipment inside the transfer station, so both trash compactors, both recycling balers, the 3 skid steers, and some other issues with inside the building. The 3 skid steers we have are in pretty good shape. We have one baler that's 35 years old that was by used. The other one's newer but was still used. Both of them are still in really good shape. We should get another 10 or 12 years out of the oldest one. But when it comes time to replace that, that's $100,000 and something for a new baler. The 2 trash compactors we can rebuild. Those are both by used when the building was originally built. So going to what Mr. Bugby said, we're paying back for the roll-off truck, but we still have a fair amount of capital expenses in there to keep the building and the transfer station running.
Thank you, Steve. Hopefully that's helpful. Please.
John Tappan, 187 Stepping Stones Road. In the plan for transfer station equipment,
Could you stay close to the
the
microphone?
plan for the transfer station equipment, there are 25 line items. And today's cost total for those 25 line items, which are projected to be purchased over the next 20 years, today's cost is just over $1 million.
Thank you, John. Further discussion on warrant article 6?
Linda Reinhold, 242 North River Road. This is in regards to all of the warrant articles. Last year, the fund balance was not included in the articles, and it was voted to include the fund balance in the articles. The slides are showing with the fund balance. The articles that I received do not show it. So I would like clarification as to whether what the warrant article is reading.
I think.
Well, and the only other issue is, unfortunately, I just realized it, so we cannot go back to the prior 5, but going forward, what is to be on the article?
You mean what's going to appear on the official ballot?
Yes.
In
Yes, because these have been presented with this, but is this the article?
Yep.
The fund balance would be additional information.
And it
The
will
fund
appear on the
balance
official
will,
ballot.
It does not appear on the official ballot as presented.
and that's what happened last year, and so, that's what I need clarification. Yes?
I was not aware that you wanted that included in the official warrant article language when these were presented to
And
DRI.
that's what happened last year. It was not intended to be in the article. However, because it was presented on the screen, it was then, they were all amended to have the balance included. Because that's what was presented, but that isn't what was in the warrant article. This is the screen, and then you also have the, so that's,
Good. All right, we have a bit of a conundrum here with how we made it partway through the agenda here without including the language. Or we have included the language to this point. So would you have a comment? Please come to the microphone.
So, as after every article, there seems to, something I vehemently disagree with, always killing off further consideration. You really pin yourself in when you do that, and for somebody, I'm paying just under 13,000 in taxes. I have a very busy life. I get someone, I'm taking my Saturday to be here. If by doing that, you're really cutting down kind of democratic input. Everybody can agree to disagree, but when I really, and I've been raising my hand, as probably some people will see opposing it. I don't do it facetiously. This is why.
I understand. Thank you. Okay, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to ask the legislative body how they would like to proceed on this. Is it the intent of the legislative body here that the sentence at the bottom of each article, which includes the standing fund balance for these capital reserve fund items, be included in the official ballot that you see in March? So I'm going to ask the legislative body to vote, to decide if they would like to see the official fund balance at the bottom of each article on the official ballot when they vote in March. Is there any second to that?
Second.
Okay, so now we'll listen to...
I was going to say, do you want me to make it an official amendment?
Please do that. It's better off coming from you than me.
Yeah. Karen Long, 16 Langley Drive. I ask that all warrant articles be amended to reflect the statement, all warrant articles involving a fund balance have a statement as presented in the PowerPoint presentation at the end of each one of those articles. Does that capture it? Not every single one has a fund balance, is that correct? So I can in writing, or if you can identify which ones do, I will state that as part of the amendment.
Is there a second for that amendment?
Second.
Okay, so what we're going to do is get the specific language of this before we proceed another step, and make sure we're all in agreement. This is not an amendment, by the way, to Article 6, but this is procedural. So I'm going to call it a motion of privilege, which bumps ahead of the article on the floor. Sure.
I'd just like to offer, the reason that we're going ahead and closing the conversation is because a lot of people find that they have to wait until the very end on something that they care about, because what if we go back to it and change it? So we do that so that you know for sure that the thing that's important to you has been discussed, we've closed that book and we've moved forward. That's why we have tried to do that.
Okay, John?
Ron Chapman, 187 Stepping Stones Road. I'd like to point out that stating the current fund balance in some cases could be quite deceptive. This fund, as of 12/31, had a balance of $185,000, but coming out of that is the cost of, or 90% of the cost of the roll-off truck. I don't know what it actually came in at, but it was budgeted at $168,000. So when the trustees of trust funds are requested to reimburse the town for the purchase of that roll-off truck, $168,000, if that's what it actually came in at, is going to come out of that $185,000. So at the end of the year, it's going to be nothing like $185,000. It's $185,000 minus $168,000.
That's, I think that statement is intended to say what it is now, I believe.
My point is that if you have a statement of what is currently in the fund without stating what has already been encumbered, because the town has paid for that truck, and that truck's been received, and that $168,000 is going to come out of that fund. So when the voter is looking at this, they think it's going to, if they vote for this, there's going to be $78,000 plus $185,000. There's not going to be $78,000 plus $185,000.
Well, what I'm going to do here, John, is I'm going to say that should be an amendment that you might make to Article 6 when we return to Article 6. Okay, so I'll get to you in a minute, sir. We'll get everybody who also wants to talk first, okay? Please.
Sarah Dawson, 19 Osprey Lane. I just wanted to comment that on this handout, there are no balances. So talk about confusion. Which is the official warrant? I would have thought this was the official one.
Well, that's what we're trying to polish up right now, if we can have a minute to organize ourselves. There's a privilege motion on the floor, which, please. It doesn't look like anybody else is in line, so you're up.
So I just wanted to follow up with the board member's comment. And I think what's concerning is, I can certainly understand somebody, maybe they come for their key article and they leave. Unfortunately, we lock these down. There could be some pertinent information that comes up that benefits the other 80, 90% of the people who are here to make a more informed decision. So what you're doing is you're basically disenfranchising the other 38 or 40 people who are willing to stay for that one person. I will always oppose the closing of articles. This is a great example of it. I'll bring it up at deliberative session in the school board as well. Please, I wish we'd stop doing it. We have so few time from the public to give input, and to limit it to save 10 or 15 minutes is pretty disheartening.
Thank you for your comments. Okay, so we have a motion that we're going to clarify right now. Again, this is a privilege motion, a procedural motion that comes before the warrant article on the floor.
All right, motion to amend Articles 4 through 10 to include a fund balance statement at the bottom as presented in the presentation.
On the official ballot.
On the official ballot, yes. To amend Articles 4 through 10 on the official ballot to include fund balance statement.
Is there a second? Second. You have a second? Is there any discussion or needed clarification on the amendment? Okay, please.
Jennifer Messiter, 147 Wadley Falls Road. If that could include, to other people's points, the current fund balance, not as of December 31st, and also a mention of how much is encumbered. So we have full information on the ballot, or is that going too far?
Mr. Moderator?
Yes.
Just as a point of order, I am not at all sure that the Department of Revenue Administration is going to approve of adding that language to the actual warrant article. You can amend it, they give you technical guidance and legal guidance, and I think for the very reason that's stated here, which balance is it? Are you going to include language about what's encumbered? I very much suspect that when I try to alter the warrant articles as submitted on the portal for the Department of Revenue Administration, I'm quite likely to get advice back saying, don't do that, or that's not allowable. I'm just
Would others like to hear this comment at the microphone? Yes. So please, Andy, come on over here. This is our town administrator, Andy Robertson, who will be dealing with the state on this issue when we put our official ballot forward.
Yes, I just wanted to make people aware that I am not at all certain that the state will approve adding specific dollar amounts to a warrant article or adding additional language about what's encumbered and what's not. When these warrant articles are submitted to the Department of Revenue Administration, I have to do so on an electronic portal, and they are subject to final approval by the Department of Revenue. The information presented on this slide regarding Capital Reserve Fund balance was intended to be informational. The actual warrant articles that were posted under the signatures of the Select Board do not include that language. This was just to give folks an idea of what was in the Capital Reserve Funds. My understanding was that this is a long-standing tradition at the Lee meeting. But I did want to advise the meeting that I am not at all certain that DRA will look favorably upon the adjustment you're looking to make.
Thank you. John, you've spoken to this one, I think, already? Okay, so I'm gonna recognize Selectman Bucket.
I'd like to propose, and I think we're all trying to get at the point where the voter comes into the booth and has all the information that they need to make an informed decision. And it would be nice to have it on the ballot, but if we can't do that, I would suggest that we put that information in the voter guide so that people have that information. And so specifically, you know, 168,000 is a lot of money, but the thing that worries me is the one for the fire truck. You're getting, you know, it's 798,000, but 650,000 has already been appropriated and for a fire truck that's coming probably soon. So I would suggest that we put that in the voter guide. It gets sent to everybody. They'll be able to read it. They'll be able to read the warrant article itself and the explanation that comes after it. So they'll understand that, you know, we've already expended some of this money, so just be aware of that. So I would suggest that.
And if in fact we're going to do that, I will withdraw my motion.
Okay, the motion is withdrawn, and the second.
I'll withdraw the second.
So it appears that we have taken that motion to amend our procedures here in that regard. I think it's been carefully explained by a town administrator that we're probably better off leaving that statement out of the official ballot. And I would ask at this time, just to see a straw vote of those of you here in the room, to see if you would be in favor of just leaving that information off at this time. This is not an official vote, this is just a polling of the group. All right, from what I'm seeing as the voter cards, and thank you for that, it looks like the flavor of the legislative body is that we disregard that statement for the official ballot. That will clean things up for us, I think, the best way. Thank you, Linda, for bringing that up. Thank you, Andy, for your commentary on this. And so now we'll reopen the discussion for Article 6. Seeing no further discussion on Article 6, we'll ask the clerk to pass Article 6 to the official ballot as presented. Is there a motion to... Please do.
All right. I would make a motion to restrict further consideration of warrant article number 6.
Second.
So we have a motion to restrict reconsideration of Article 6 and a second. All those in favor of restricting reconsideration of Article 6, please raise your voter cards. All those opposed? Come on, put your voter card on. There you go, okay. Thank you very much. The motion passes to restrict reconsideration of Article 6. But I think a lot of us in the room agree with your sentiments on this. All right, we'll move to Article 7, Highway Department, Road and Bridge Capital Reserve Fund.
Warrant Article 7, Highway Department, Road and Bridge Capital Reserve Fund. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $90,000 to be deposited into the Highway Department Road and...
Sunlight right on the screen. Keep going.
Oh, okay. To be deposited into the Highway Department Road and Bridge Improvement Plan Capital Reserve Fund. The Select Board recommends this article. Majority vote is required. As of 12/31/21, this fund has a balance of $619,932.
Thank you. We'll open the floor for discussion of Article 7. We're having some issues with our screen here because of a blast of sunlight, and so if anybody does not have the printed material in front of them and needs to be able to see this in writing, we can get you a copy of the printed material. Okay, please, to the microphone. This is a discussion on Article 7.
Paul Gzowski, 46 Lantern Lane. I just, the way Selectman Ron just read the warrant article, he just read the fund balance, the existing fund balance as part of the warrant article? What's in the fund?
I would say that that last sentence is now informational and not part of the article.
I'm just trying to figure, I think that what we're really looking at here, we're not talking about the slides.
Correct.
The slides are wrong. What Mr. Brown read was wrong, okay? And what we're looking at is this. This is what we're working from. Is that correct?
That is correct. That's the interpretation we made recently with the straw poll, that we're going to leave that last statement out of the official ballot. So what you have is intended to be passed to the official ballot,
That's
unless
correct.
it's amended.
So as we move forward, like, everybody needs to realize the slides are wrong, and whoever's reading the warrant article needs to omit reading that.
Last line.
Last line.
Okay, thank you for that reminder. I think that makes sense. Any further discussion on Article 7? Everybody understands that the last statement that talks about the fund balance as of a certain date is not part of the official warrant article. Please.
Charlie McLean, 51 Harvey Mill Road. Pretty much the same comment as on Article 6. What we heard was what the balance is and what you're going to appropriate, what's it used for, what's encumbered, what planned expenditures are coming up, etc. I think we need more detail to make an informed decision on this article.
Thank you. Could we ask the department head, Steve Bullock, to respond to that? Or look, you're at the microphone, please, John.
John Tappan again. The items that are listed there, Chesley Brook Culvert,
Stay to the microphone
Chesley
closer,
Brook
please.
Culvert, Tuttle Road Pipe, rehabilitate half mile of road, Tuttle Road Bridge replacement, Cartland Road Bridge, Stepping Stone Culvert, Old Mill Road Bridge replacement, Snell Road Bridge replacement, and also James Farm Drainage Boundary Survey.
Thank you, John. Steve?
So John stated what the trust fund is, what's in the trust fund. But in the current fiscal year, we're gonna replace Chesley Brook pipe on Packers Falls Road. The total cost for that pipe is $387,000. We're able to secure an ARM grant through the state for $250,000 of that, so we only end up costing the taxpayers about $120 to $140. And then the bridges in town are estimated, the 3 bridges will probably be over $1.5 million each. So we should be able to get state bridge aid for that, but you still need to be able to pay from 80% of it up front, and then the state reimburses you.
Thank you, Steve. Mr. Bugby?
Just to let everybody know, there's a tool that John is reading from. He doesn't have these things just in his mind, even though he could. He's very detailed. But the board is entering into kind of a partnership with Mr. Tappan. There's a thing that we have that's called the financial planning tool. It's kind of like the CIP, but totally different. It lists all the particular things the town needs to work on and how we're going to pay for them. It could be, a new building. It could be, a fire truck. Could be anything. So that's what he's reading from, and that's something that he's been working hard on, and I want to thank him personally for doing that. He does a very nice job. At some point when it's finalized, in terms of the application itself, he'll be turning it over to the Select Board's office for us to utilize. But I want to thank him. He's done an excellent job in terms of working with the department heads, working with the board, and that's what he's reading from, just so everybody knows. So thank you very much, John.
Thank you, Scott. Further discussion on Article 7. Seeing no further discussion on Article 7, we'll ask the town clerk to pass Article 7 along to the official ballot, omitting the line that talks about the fund balance.
I'd make a motion to restrict further consideration of warrant article number 7.
Second.
We have a motion to restrict reconsideration of Article 7 and a second. All those in favor, please raise your voter cards. All those opposed, voter cards. Thank you very much. Motion to restrict reconsideration is passed. Article 8, Highway Equipment Capital Reserve Fund.
Warrant Article 8, Highway Equipment Capital Reserve Fund, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate a sum of $55,000 to be deposited into the Highway Equipment Capital Reserve Fund. The Select Board recommends this article. Majority vote required.
All right, we have warrant Article 8 on the floor, and we'll open it for discussion. John?
I just wanted to add, if people do want to see what is in the financial planning tool, there is a printout of it, which the town administrator has. It's at the town office, and you can see it there.
Thank you. Any other discussion on warrant Article 8? Please.
Just Regan, just wondering if that could be put on the town website, to have access to it.
It certainly can. I will say that it is very detailed and very tiny in print, and might be better viewed at the town offices, but that is certainly an accommodation we can make.
Andy says, come to the town office and he'll walk you through it. Please.
Tasha Lewis, 35 James Farm Road. When it comes to those specific details that are included in the financial planning tool, transparency is key to being able to pass and have the voters approve all of these articles, including the operating budget. So I think, I'm new to this community, and what I've heard just sitting in this session today is those details that are in that financial planning tool and that will be incorporated by the select board, that information is key for us as voters to be able to understand, so we can put our vote forth with, from an educated perspective of how our vote affects our taxpayer dollars. So I think putting it, even though it's tiny, even though it's big, putting it on the website allows for easy access for someone that doesn't have the opportunity to drive down to the town offices. So I think, again, as much of that information can get out there to be shared with this community, that would be incredibly helpful. So thank you.
Thank you. Oh, please.
That is absolutely our intention. I just want you to know this is something that John's working on this year, something that's new and being created. It's in draft form. So we have it available right now so you can see it, but the goal is to have that always available so you can see that in the future. It's just not finished, and so if there's mistakes, the numbers, we have to verify that all the numbers work and make sense. So that's what we're working on right now.
On Chapman again, and it should be pointed out that all of the input and all of the information that's in the financial planning tool is information that was discussed at public meetings with the select board, and those are open to everyone in town. And I think that they are also all recorded, and you can watch them on YouTube.
Thank you, John.
I'd like to say one other thing to that. So Tasha Lewis, 35 James Farm Road. So while that information is included at the select board meetings, it's not comprehensive all in one place. And again, I think that becomes super important because there's different focuses at some of the meetings, and being able to have it all in one place, again, is just super helpful from as residents trying to pull information, whether it's like participate or whether I'm downloading information and trying to get a big picture sense of, again, what we're voting for. So I think that that's important. The other thing, recognizing if it's not final, again, draft is a way to solve that, marking it or watermarking a draft if you guys are still working through that. So just wanted to show that. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. I'd ask our town administrator, do you envision a way that this can be incorporated in our,
Yes.
it looks like they're in agreement that this is important and will be incorporated in our town website soon, I hope. All right, returning to discussion on Article 8, Mr. Bullock.
So this fund pays for equipment that we use in the highway department, so the big usage of it is to replace plow trucks. One of our current plow trucks is 31 years old, the other one is 29 years old, so this would go toward buying new, used plow trucks. At some point, we would like to buy a small excavator that would enable us to do roadside ditching. It would also help us in the cemetery with interments. We buy trailers and just regular equipment that we use for the maintenance of the roads in the town.
Thank you, Steve. Further discussion on Article 8? Are we working on an amendment over here? For Article 8?
Next one.
Okay. Further discussion on Article 8? Hearing no further discussion, we'll ask the town clerk to pass warrant Article 8 to the official ballot as presented, omitting the line that discusses the fund balance.
I make a motion to restrict further consideration of warrant article number 8.
Second.
We have a motion to restrict reconsideration of Article number 8. All those in favor of the motion, please raise your voter cards. Those opposed, raise your voter cards. Thank you. The motion to restrict reconsideration is passed. Warrant Article 9, Lee Library Building Capital Reserve Fund.
See if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum not to exceed $30,000 to be deposited into the Lee Library Capital Reserve Fund. The Select Board recommends this article. Majority vote required. Absolutely. Currently, we would love to have a lot more money that we could set aside. But right now, we believe it's important to have at least $30,000 going in, so we have money to move forward with plans for the library. Does anyone else want to speak to this?
Okay, the floor is open for discussion of warrant Article 9.
Renee, when Trin read this, she left the word building, and there are two different funds, so this one is definitely the library building capital reserve fund.
Oh, sorry, I apologize.
Okay, does that need further clarification to anybody in the room?
Yes, because there are two funds for the
Yes,
library, so
I apologize.
we need to be specific.
Well, can we ask you to come back to the microphone and reintroduce warrant Article 9 then, please? Just so we're all on the same page.
To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum not to exceed $30,000 to be deposited into the Lee Library Building Capital Reserve Fund. The Select Board recommends this article. Majority vote required.
All right, is warrant Article 9 clarified for everyone? Okay, please.
Jennifer Messiter, 147 Wadley Falls Road. What's on the paper is not quite what's on the screen. The screen says not to exceed $30,000. The paper says the sum of $30,000. So are we doing exactly 30,000, or are we doing 0 to 30,000.
Thank you for that question. We're going to solve that in just a second here.
Thank you. I think we should just read from this and no longer from the slides. It'll make it easier. But yes, it should be to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $30,000 to be deposited into the Lee Library Building Capital Reserve Fund. Select Board recommends this article. Majority vote required.
Is everyone clear now on the wording of Article 9? Thank you for clearing that up and bringing up the fact that we had a word change here. Other discussion on Article 9? Please.
I'm going to make an amendment, Darren Keller, 20 Chestnut Way. I'm going to make an amendment, but first my comment. I think we have this backwards. This is a needs versus wants. And if you look at it, you probably could say, yeah, the town hall is a bigger need. Well, yet we don't have a town hall fund. We have this generic slush fund, if you will, for buildings. But yet we have a specific fund for a library which has consistently been voted down. And I see this as, throwing it up on the wall. The sticky rolls down the wall, and we throw it again. And I'm going to make an amendment, and I'm going to propose that we strike Article 9 from consideration and/or zero the balance and contribute 0 to this fund.
Just, I have to clarify just a second.
I can read it specifically if she wants to read it specifically.
Well, I just want to say that we can't strike Article 9. You can make an amendment to zero the balance.
I did mention that in the article about, zeroing out the fund.
Okay, just wanted to make sure we were clear on that. So we have a motion to amend Article 9 to zero the balance in Article 9. Is there a second? Hearing no support for the article, it does not travel. Further discussion on Article 9? Please.
Right now, in the situation we have in the town, we have several different buildings that all need to be addressed. So in order to deal with town hall needs, municipal building needs, we have to leave open the door of could we use one of the buildings we already have as something else, and then that way save money on a new building or a different building. The library is different. The library trustees are in charge of the library. It's a different situation, and so we'd like to have an area that they know they can utilize when they need to make changes into the current library and then to build money towards the future as well. So that's why we have one kind of big chunk, and then we have a specific area for the library to make sure there's funding going forward.
Thank you. Mr. Tappan.
John Tappan, 187 Stepping Stones Road. There are 4 funds, capital reserve funds, that can be used for buildings. For the library, there is the Library Capital Reserve Fund created in 1998. The current balance of that is $133,800. There is the Lee Library Building Capital Reserve Fund that was created by a change of purpose from the previous fund, which was for the Library Community Center to be built on the Bricker property. The purpose of that fund is capital expenditures for the town's library building. That's the one you're talking about here. In addition, there is the Town Buildings Capital Reserve Fund, which has been talked about previously. And there is also the Renovating Town Hall Capital Reserve Fund, which was created in 2019. There was a one-time deposit of $50,000 to that. And the current balance of that is $52,270.
Thank you.
And again, at Town Hall, there's a book with all of that information in it, including the description of the funds and what their purposes are.
Thank you, John.
I think it'd be great for us to get a record too as well. It is not continuously been voted down, the library. It's actually been voted yes almost every time except for one time recently, until it was put into a larger project, and then that's when that, so just to have the record straight, it has consistently been supported by the town until it was placed in a larger package.
Mr. Chapman, could you clarify something for me? It's my understanding, maybe I'm wrong, the library capital reserve fund, you said it has a balance of 133. 100,000 is yet to come out of that, correct?
That's correct. At the last vote, the legislative body voted to withdraw up to $100,000 from that for library renovation and addition.
Okay.
And I'm not sure how much of that has been spent, but there have been expenditures.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Other discussion, Article 9, please.
Darren Keller, 20 Chestnut Way. Just wanted to reiterate, as a voter, to the member's comment, it specifically says building capital reserve. So you want to talk about books or other things, that's one thing. But when I see a building, I have to believe in knowing, and I think what, do the straight face test. That people absolutely have it in their mind that they would go to every little fund they could. For those who are, supportive of the library, would snatch every dollar they could out of every little fund they could to fund it. And I would say that if you were to go right now, and the voters proved it, so don't take my word for it, but if you were to go vote for a library right now, it would be soundly rejected. And if you don't believe me, let's put another article in and let's prove it.
Thank you.
Dave Cedarholm, Fox Garrison Road. I want to speak in favor of this warrant article and all the other warrant articles to put money into reserve funds, because all those reserve funds are tied to a plan that is very carefully thought out and updated every year, and that is the capital improvements plan. And so we don't just willy-nilly throw dollars into trust funds to do whatever. There are plans for these monies. And if we don't put a little bit of money each year into these funds, and $30,000 is not a lot of money. You can't replace the roof for that on that library for $30,000. So it's important that we put sums of money like this into these trust funds every year to support the capital improvements plan that is very well thought out and updated by committees and staff and boards every year. So I speak in favor of this warrant article. I also want to say there seems to be a sentiment of distrust tonight of committees and staff and the select board. And I just want to say, I've voted for the vast majority of all warrant articles in the past. And I really think that we have a fantastic board, we've got fantastic staff. I think they genuinely are critical of what monies get spent. And also, when we have big projects that come forward, it's not the select board or any of the other committees that say, no, we're going to just stuff this to the voters, we're going to take it out of the fund balance, and we're just going to let the select board do whatever they want. No, those projects are brought forward in a thoughtful, methodical way, and most projects that make sense get passed and get approved. And we have had some really grandiose projects come forward that have been voted down. And I think it's really important that we take the Randy Stevens approach and be frugal Yankees as we bring projects forward. And anything Randy ever brought forward had a frugal Yankee approach, and that's why they got approved. So go frugal Yankees, and thank you, Select Board, and all the staff and committees for what you do.
Thank you. Hold on just a second. Does anybody else would like to speak to Article 9? All right, you're welcome to the microphone.
Chestnut Way, Darren Keller. So just follow up on that discussion. Because if you want to talk about mistrust and you want to hear these, we're going to have this discussion in this deliberative session. I think from speaking with multiple of my neighbors, many of us were busy, very difficult to get to meetings, so there are those select number of people who end up on the same committees, the same boards. Same thing happens on the school again and again and again. So if you actually go look at the vote, look at how often there's a lot of no votes. So there is a substantial undercurrent there that's not just willy-nilly. And the other thing that I want to make sure that people understand, a lot of those no votes, they're actually thought out. It's not just, hey, I'm just pro against the system. There's actually a reason behind that. And oftentimes people discount that not everybody agrees with this. And a lot of people have very good reasons for that. And I think, unfortunately, that gets drowned out with the way our committees are set up. I would love to be able to participate more, but the timings of it, for me, works great. But for a lot of people during the week, I'm a professional. I work way too many hours. I physically couldn't make the meetings. If I were to run for select board, I would get kicked off the board for not participating because I wouldn't be there every time. So please, for anybody who has that sentiment that thinks it's anger, or, I'm educated, I can think for myself, but, there was a little bit of, that comment, I would just caution somebody of making, it's not about distrust, it's a matter of watching systemic issues and decisions that have been decided over many years that has made me I truly don't trust the board, I truly don't trust the school board, and I could literally articulate every reason why, not just out of spite. So please, I hope people when they've seen me make these articles, you're probably going to see more of me, you're probably going to see more about the school board. I'm finding some pretty significant things in there. So, but, I take a little bit of exception to people, I'd really be disappointed if somebody just thinks it's out of spite or just being just being facetious. That's not at all. There's a conscious thought behind this.
Thank you for your carefully thought out words on these things. I know that we all feel that there are a lot of people in town that feel the same way. It would be wonderful if we could find a way to incorporate more people of different walks of life and job and family situations onto our boards and committees. And so I think all of us agree with you on that. Please.
Possible I misheard you. Did you say you do not trust the select board?
I do not.
You do not. And may I ask just what it is that turns that on?
Point of order.
I think I will call this point of order at this time because we're moving far afield from Article 9, although it's a very important discussion. And we're going to bring it up at the end of these articles. So if you would reserve your questions for Mr. Keller till the end of the articles, I would appreciate it.
I'll do that.
Thank you. So we'll return our focus to Article 9. Discussion on Article 9? Seeing no further discussion, we'll ask that Article 9 is asked to the town clerk to be part of the official oh, I'm sorry. The amendment was defeated. Okay, so we're going to pass Article 9 as presented to the town clerk to appear on the official ballot without the statement at the bottom that speaks to the fund balance.
I make a motion to respect further consideration of warrant article number 9.
Second.
We have a motion on the floor to restrict reconsideration of Article 9 and a second. All those in favor of reconstructing, I'm going to say this wrong 100 times, restricting reconsideration of Article 9, please raise your voter cards. Thank you. Those opposed? The motion to restrict reconsideration has passed. Article 10, warrant Article 10, Fire Ponds, Cisterns, Capital Reserve Fund.
To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $20,000 to be deposited into the Fire Ponds and Cisterns Capital Reserve Fund. The Select Board recommends this article. Majority vote required.
Thank you. We'll open the floor for discussion on warrant Article 10. Discussion on warrant Article 10. Seeing no further discussion on Article 10, we're going to ask to pass this Article 10 to the official ballot. Ask the town clerk to make that happen. And we're going to exclude the statement about the fund balance. All right, we have a motion on the floor to restrict reconsideration of Article 10. And second.
Second.
Okay, so could you restate your motion?
Sure. I would make a motion to restrict further consideration of warrant article number 10.
And that's been seconded by Mr. Bugby. All those in favor of restricting reconsideration of this article, please raise your voter cards. Those opposed? The motion to restrict reconsideration is passed. Warrant Article 11, contingency.
Warrant Article number 11, contingency, to see if the town will vote to establish a contingency fund for the fiscal year 2023 for unanticipated expenses that may arise, and further to raise and appropriate $20,000 to go into the fund. The sum to come from the unassigned fund balance and no amount to be raised from general taxation. Any appropriation left in the fund at the end of the year will lapse into the general fund. The governing body shall annually publish a detailed report of all the expenditures from the fund. The Select Board recommends this article. Majority vote required.
Would you like to speak to it in any other way?
No, I think so.
All right, warrant Article 11, contingency fund. We'll open the floor for discussion. Discussion on Article 11. All right, hearing no discussion on Article 11, we'll ask that the Article 11 is passed to the official ballot by the town clerk as written.
I'll make a motion to restrict further consideration of warrant article number 11.
Second.
All right, we have a motion on the floor to restrict reconsideration of Article 11, and it has been seconded. So, all those in favor of restricting reconsideration of Article 11, please raise your voter cards. Those opposed? Thank you. The motion to restrict reconsideration is passed. Warrant Article 12, Fire Pond Cisterns Change of Purpose.
Article 12, to see if the town will vote to change the purpose of the existing fire pond and cistern capital reserve fund to allow for the installation of new fire ponds and cisterns, and to allow the repair and replacement of existing fire ponds and cisterns, and to name the Select Board as agents to expend. The Select Board recommends this article, 2/3 vote required.
Okay, Article 12. Any discussion of Article 12? Please.
Ambassador 147 Wadley Falls Road. Just a question. This one sounded familiar. Did we see it last year and it just didn't pass?
No,
Okay, so the question is, did we do this before?
Nice catch. Yes, we did, and it was worded incorrectly. We're just rewording it to appropriately change it to the right wording.
Can you give us a little, any more background on
The agent.
why it was worded?
The agents to expend were not correct, so we couldn't use it last year.
It did not specify the select board as agents to
Correct.
expend.
It did not specify the select board as agents to expend, so we are now just writing that one.
Good catch. You did do this before, but we're doing it correctly this time. Discussion of warrant Article 12. Any discussion? Warrant Article 12? All right, therefore, we will, hearing no further discussion, we'll ask the town clerk to pass Article 12 as presented to the official ballot.
I make a motion to restrict further consideration of warrant article number 12.
Second.
We have a motion on the floor to restrict reconsideration of Article 12. And second, all those in favor of restricting reconsideration of Article 12, please raise your voter cards. All those opposed? Okay, thank you. It passes. Motion passes to restrict reconsideration. Article 13.
I don't know if you guys have noticed, but I get all the long ones. I don't know why that is, but. Warrant Article number 13, elderly exemption. Shall the town modify the provisions of RSA 72:39-A for the elderly exemption for property tax in the town of Lee, based on assessed value for qualified taxpayers, to be as follows. For a person 65 years of age up to 74 years of age, $217,500. For a person 75 years of age up to 79 years of age, $262,500. Sorry. For a person of 80 years or older, $337,500. To qualify, the person must have been a New Hampshire resident for at least 3 consecutive years, own the real estate individually or jointly, or if the real estate is owned by such person's spouse, they must have been married to each other for at least 5 consecutive years. In addition, the taxpayer must have a net income of not more than $46,500, or if married, a combined net income of less than $59,400, and own assets not in excess of $222,500, excluding the value of the person's residence. The Select Board recommends this article, majority vote required.
Any comments you'd like to make?
Sure. We all got our tax bills, and you notice that the valuation of each of your properties probably went up. The average is about 54%. One of the things this did is affected the elderly people that we have in town. Their assessment went up, and of course, when the assessment goes up, the rate goes down. But we didn't take into consideration their exemption didn't go up at the same time. These particular exemption amounts, in terms of the dollar amounts for their properties, I proposed, and the Select Board agreed, we raise them 25%, not the full 54, but 25%. So at least helps those particular people. Some of these people haven't had a tax bill for a while, they're on fixed incomes, they can't afford it. And I think this is beneficial to those particular people. Unfortunately, if these people can't pay their taxes, they're going to sell, they're going to move out of town, they're going to sell their houses to somebody who has X number of children to go into the school district, and it's going to be more expensive for us as a community. The other thing is called inclusivity. We're forcing out these elderly people out of our community, and I don't think that's right. And I think this is a step at least to assist those particular people.
Thank you. Open discussion on Article 13. Please.
Keller, 20 Chestnut Lane. I read this article, put a lot of thought into this because I can certainly empathize with those elderly people maybe that lived here a long time. I certainly understand that. My own taxes went up about $900. Same house, same well, same septic, and now I'm feeling the pinch myself. And one of the things that bothers me about this is we have people in town with large tracts that are basically in conservation easements and stuff like that. They're getting these huge tax breaks. At the end of the day, they end up, others end up paying for it. And it's kind of the same problem here. that while I can empathize with the guy next to me that he's got that problem, I'm also paying for that. And I think what's missing from this is, what's the impact of this? Is this costing me $500,000? Is this $100,000? So I don't necessarily want to make an amendment. I'm going to vote against it, not because, and I can, like I said, I've had elderly parents who totally get it, but at the same time, the school system keeps squeezing us, you know, and the cost of things are going up, and, you know, at the end of the day, you know, I think, and I've already talked to this board before, you really need to look at working with the state to stop eliminating 60-acre tracts from being taxed the same as a 1 acre lot in a clustered subdivision. That's the core issue here. So to me, this is, you know, what I would call picking at nits. But I would like to know the financial impact of this. Maybe that would change my vote. But you know, if this is going to cost us $500 grand, I think we should add that to the language of what this is going to cost the taxpayers, including the minority.
Thank you. We have another person to the microphone.
Alexander Taylor, 30 Newtown Plains Road. I'm just curious what mechanism this uses. Is this, I see that 65 years to 74 years, it's just shy of a quarter, or 217,000. Is that a discount, or if your house assesses at lower than that, you don't get a bill? I'm just curious how it works.
Thank you for that question. Is anybody who wants to address that?
So let's say you are 65 years old, your house is worth $200,000. You will not get a tax bill. If your house is assessed at, let's make the math a little easy, $317,500, you're going to get a tax bill based on the assessment of that difference, that $100,000. So most of these people, and I know, and I don't think he has it yet, the town administrator is working up how much that is going to be affecting those particular people. Because right now we have, and I understand what Mr. Keller is talking about, but we've got some people that, elderly people, little ladies that are on fixed income, their house isn't worth very much, they can't afford it. One of the ladies, I believe she got a $1,600 tax bill, and she can't afford it. She just doesn't have the money. So what is she going to do? She's either going to have to, you know, lose her house, she's going to have to move someplace else. So we're forcing these particular people out, and it's unfortunate. And like I said, all the assessments went up on an average of 54%, so we're not even totally getting her back to where she was before. We're kind of meeting her halfway. So yes, so some people don't get tax bills, some people get smaller tax bills, but it's based on those particular amounts are taken off their assessment of their particular property.
Right, I was wondering if it was, if you just missed it by a couple dollars, if you were going to get the full-on tax bill, and that was, that didn't seem to make sense. So thank you for the clarification.
Thank you. Another commenter?
Good morning, I'm Kent Casper, Elder Osborne Drive. I would like to inquire as to how the town establishes net income and net assets for the purposes of administering this article.
Thank you, good question. Is there anyone who would like to address it? Okay, our town administrator, Mr. Robertson.
The corridors used in that are specified by state RSA, and there is a base level that you can start with. The Board of Selectmen looks at that base level, decides if they want to use the base requirements or if they want to be more generous in their offerings or more restrictive.
Sorry, I understand that. My question is more, how is the town looking at someone's income? Because we have an assessment on our houses and land, but to my knowledge, I'm not telling the town my income or my net assets.
If you
So
wish,
I'd like to understand, for instance, what is included in someone's net asset evaluation, and what documentation do they need to provide to the town in order that that is established?
and that is certainly something that the select board takes a look at. There are very specific requirements if you are seeking the elderly exemption. You do typically provide tax documentation, a list of assets that may be reviewed by the assessing clerk. If the assessing clerk doesn't feel the information is correct or that something's missing, it may be referred to the select board to address further. But it's the same if you apply for a hardship exemption. The select board has very specific criteria. Most of that information is available on the town website and gives you an idea of exactly what the board or the assessing clerk will be looking for if you seek the exemption. And typically it starts with tax records.
So it sounds like these people will apply for this particular tax exemption. We'll provide the information. Aaron.
Karen Long, 16 Langley Drive. A quick question on the net income values. In the process of trying to get a grant for some water work to be done on the property and the development I live in, and the state has assessed disadvantaged income levels of $74,000. Yet we have a much lower value for the elderly. And I'm just wondering where those numbers came from, and should they be adjusted accordingly with 3% cost of living increases, increases Social Security, those kinds of things, so that that woman that's where she's at may not be where she's at. Thank you.
Anyone want to catch that one?
The RSA allows the town to set these particular levels, also in terms of setting the levels for the income. This particular proposal is the same income level as the current elder exemption that the town has, so we did not increase those at that particular time. This is really to address the assessment that we just did, that we raised everybody's assessment. So yes, maybe next year we can look at those particular numbers, or if the board, if the group here wishes, we can amend it to include different income levels. But yes, that is something we could change if we wanted to.
Hold on a minute. I saw your hand.
Chris Regan, 19 Earl Drive. Just wondering, are you able to present information on how much of the taxes that would have been paid for people who qualified that will be diverted to everybody else?
I don't have a specific dollar amount for you. To give folks a general idea of the scope of what happened with the valuation change, roughly 44, possibly 43 senior citizens in Lee were not receiving a tax bill prior to the revaluation. After revaluation, that number was cut just about exactly in half. You have 21 elderly folks in Lee at this time that are not receiving a tax bill. I would also point out that the majority of folks that we heard from at the town office regarding their assessment, regarding difficulty paying taxes, were folks from the various modular housing and mobile home developments you have in town. The valuation was huge with regard to the more affordable housing in the community, and a lot of those people were in the elderly category as well. But basically, you cut the number from 44 to 21 or 22 of elderly folks no longer receiving a tax bill at Lee.
The amount, a lot of people, I don't know what the number is, may be not receiving no tax bill, but they're still getting a significant reduction probably.
There are some people who are still seeing a significant reduction, yes.
I would love to learn about what the standard or average in the state is for the income level, which was already addressed.
Could you come a little closer to the mic?
Sorry. I'd be very interested, as somebody else brought up, what addressing the income level, because if you earn $59,500, you're not qualified for the exemption, even though you know that little tiny bit of money doesn't make a difference in somebody's lifestyle, but it definitely makes a difference in not having to pay tax or having your taxes reduced. So it was already addressed, but be very interesting to know and to look at whether that amount could come up. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else on Article 13? Mr. Keller? Oh, go ahead, Mr. Keller.
Gary Keller, 20 Chestnut Way. Just wanted to follow up on when we talked about the cost. If we're going to lower their assessment, part of the school funding formula is the assessment, as well as the number of children. And it's like I would hope that somebody at 75 years old doesn't have 3 kids in that house, which would really be a disadvantage to the school system. But would that lower our total apportionment to the school? Or are we getting a hit there as well because we still have that same apportionment for the total amount, but yet we're giving them a break. So not only are we giving them a break there, but then we're penalizing ourselves in the school too. So I think I'd really like to know the cost of this.
So is the Oyster River School Board contribution based on assessment or based on what they pay for taxes? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, it's kind of a weird formula. It's based on, and again, you look on the state, but 2 of the primary things are obviously the number of kids by the town, and the other part of it is basically your total assessment. You add it up and put it into this wonky little formula, and it spits out, and that's why our taxes go kind of crazy year to year and town to town. But so essentially, we could potentially be paying this twice because you get hit with the town, we're cutting them a break, but yet we still get hit with a full apportionment, and we're giving them a break there. It's really, it starts to become a little bit unfair to the taxpayer.
Thank you. Does anybody want to make a comment on that?
Darren, it's my understanding it's the total assessment. So this is something that's internal to the town. So, but yeah, they'll use the 713 million, I think it's million, yeah, million. That is our total assessment. So it's 50% assessment, 50% average daily attendance. So that's how they calculate our particular part. The other thing, and I hope my fellow SLIP people would back me up on this, we will include the dollar implication for this particular amendment in the voter guide. I got 1 nod for the town administrator. Sounds good. So I think that would be helpful because it would be helpful in terms of when people make that determination, is this something I can support or not? How much does that really mean to the town in terms of lost revenue?
Well, that will be some more information on that will be in the voter guide. Were you headed to the microphone?
Hello, Cord Luquist, 1 Eagle Road. It's important to think about income and expense when we're thinking about this. Every older person that moves out of one of these houses, we may be forfeiting maybe a maximum of $7,000 or $8,000 of income for each person. But if a person moves in who has 1 kid in the school district, $12,500 out the door. 2 kids, $25,000. So we're letting go of 8 in order to avoid an expense of 12.5. To me, that means we're ahead $4,500. Those figures are rough, but if you want your tax bill to go up, the best way to do it is to kick every old person out of town and get people into town who have kids in schools. So the only way that the town works well is to have a balanced population where you have young people without kids, some people with kids who are going to school, and older people in the community. And I'd love to see more commercial development too, so they can start paying some of the bills as well. But we want to have a healthy mix of people in the town. Surefire way to get your taxes to go up as fast as possible is to get rid of the elderly population.
Thank you.
Karen Rossi, 38 West Mill Pond Road. After the select board meeting when Cord mentioned the cost of children, I reached out to Susan Caswell, she's the business administrator at Oyster River, and she replied back to me that it's $20,000 and some change per kid per year in the Oyster River School District, not $12,000, which.
Well, it's way off.
Yep, so it's $20,000, and I would like to move the question.
Okay, we have I'm not going to ask to move the question yet because we had somebody standing behind you at the microphone. So looks like we have a motion to move the question. That's not debatable. If there's a second. All right, I see a second. So this is the motion is to limit debate, further debate on this article. All in favor, raise your voter cards. Those opposed, raise your voter cards. The motion to restrict further comment is passed. So I will ask then, therefore, that the warrant article number 13 be passed to the official ballot by our town clerk, as stated.
Make a motion to restrict further consideration of warrant article number 13.
Second.
All right, we have a motion to restrict reconsideration of Article 13 and second. All those in favor of that motion, please raise your voter cards. Those opposed, raise your voter cards. The motion to restrict reconsideration of Article 13 is passed. Article 14.
Warrant Article 14, the CIP Appointment Authority. We have actually the correct writing. Sorry. To see if the town will vote to authorize the select board as provided by RSA 674:5-1 to remove the planning board's responsibility for the town capital improvement program, and 2, to establish, appoint, and implement a capital improvement program committee whose purpose shall be to prepare and amend a recommended program of municipal capital improvement expenditures projected over a period of at least 6 years to assist the select board and the advisory budget committee in completion of the annual budget. Membership of such committee shall include at least one member of the planning board and may include, but not limited to, other members of the planning board, the advisory budget committee, the select board, town employees, and residents of the town of Lee. The select board recommends this article. Majority vote required. The reason this is important is we currently have a CIP program in place that has some errors and some mistakes, and is one that is just run by the planning board. And we think it would be important to use updated procedures. We also don't get this information until it's far too late to use. So we really do need this information to come faster so that the ABC committee and the select board can use it during the budget process. Also, in the interest of inclusivity, we have a lot of great people in this town who have excellent ideas and are great with budgets and math, and we would love to have them included as well, not just the planning board. So that's why this is important.
Okay, the floor is open for discussion for Article 14.
John Chapin, 187 Stepping Stones Road. I'd like to ask why the warrant article says the recommended program of municipal capital improvement expenditures when 674:5 says a recommended program of municipal capital improvement projects. It doesn't say expenditures, it says projects in the RSA.
Okay.
My understanding is that this language came from the DRA recommended warrant article language for this, and to the best of my knowledge, I copied it exactly from that technical bulletin that the DRA puts out, and that's why it was worded that way.
Is there someone else who would like to speak to this same article, or do you want more clarification, John? Let's let John get more clarification on his comment.
I know that our town administrator can't answer this question, but my question would be, did DRA read RSA?
What?
That I don't know.
Dave Cedarholm, Fox Garrison Road. So I'm on the planning board, and although I'm not intimately involved in the development of the CIP today, but I have been significantly in the past, both as a planning board member and as a select board member. I think to address John's question, the capital improvements plan defines the expenditures to be spent on projects or even purchasing of equipment like fire trucks and things like that. So maybe that helps. But I also want to say I'm in favor of this warrant article, although this is the planning board's responsibility. The planning board is really not involved. The development of the CIP has been a brainchild and a big effort of the chair's work for many years. Bob Smith has done a great job, and he works really hard to be inclusive. But it's a long and cumbersome process. There are really only 2 planning board members that are in that group that puts this together. But from my perspective as being on the select board, it does. It comes, the CIP comes to the board way too late in the process. In many other communities, Durham, for example, it is the finance director and the administration and the staff that put all the work together, which is what happens today. It's the staff that provide those numbers to the committee that Bob Smith and others who finesse this master spreadsheet. So I'm really in favor of this. I think it makes sense to bring this into the select board's power and give the town administrator the ability to really start working with this early and working with staff early. And it will include members of the planning board. In fact, it states that. So we're still going to have sort of the equivalent participation by the planning board in this committee, and I think that's essential. But having the ability for the town administrator, select board, and other staff to really get their arms around this very early in the process is a really great thing, and I'm in favor of it. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Guzowski.
Paul Guzowski, 46 Piper Lane. It's getting harder to get up and down. I do have several questions, but I guess I'll start with the first one. Yeah, I share the perception that the CIP in the past has been difficult to bring forward and perhaps slow. The good thing about the CIP in the past is it had a direct input from the department heads and from committees, if you will. And I don't think that'll get lost in this, but this is a recasting of the process. And I don't think it's necessarily bad, but I am concerned that it surfaces at the same time that the draft of the planning tool, if you will, is being brought forward. And I want to emphasize that, as said earlier, that the planning tool that is being brought forward is a draft, indeed. And it hasn't been completely vetted, unless I missed some things, and I've been kind of following this. So it's interesting, and I'd like to have somebody speak to the interface, if you will, between this warrant article and the planning tool, if you will.
Okay, I'm going to let Mr. Tappan answer that, I believe.
Quoting from RSA 674:6, talking about the capital improvements program, which again is the recommended program of municipal capital improvement projects. It states that the program shall take into account public facility, sorry, wrong part there. The sole purpose and effect of the capital improvements program shall be to aid the selectmen and the budget committee in their consideration of the annual budget. So it is a recommendation from the capital improvement program committee to the select board, the governing body. Financial planning tool is a tool for the governing body, the select board, to assist them in making the annual budget. The previous committee that I was on put it forward, but this is something that I've thought about that was needed for several years. It's because at budget deliberation season, the meetings, I've watched the select board make decisions about amounts to be put into capital reserve funds or trust funds without having any tool that shows them the effect of the changes that they're making. And the financial planning tool does that. For a list of line items, expenses that are expected to be paid from that fund, it calculates how much you have to put in each year. If you decide to override that amount, it shows you the result. If it calls for putting in $100,000 this year, and you decide to change that to $75,000, it recalculates to show you that, well, next year, you need to put in more than $100,000. Or you need to change the scheduling of some line items, move them further out. So the CIP and the FPT are actually independent tools. Much of the content may be the same, but they're independent and they're used by different groups. I also still have a problem with the lack of the word projects in this warrant article.
Do we hear a motion to amend it?
I would like to make a motion to amend.
You will need to submit this, but you can state it now.
To strike the word expenditures in the phrase municipal capital improvement expenditures, and to replace it with the wording that is in the RSA, the word projects.
Okay, can you please come forward and scribble that down for us? Okay, we will take another comment from Mr. Kozowski, because I think we're on the same thread here. Then Mr. Keller, you're next.
Paul Kozowski, 46 Lancer Lane. Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I followed the development of the financial planning tool and the town hall, the town center committees for, well, maybe a decade and a half. Okay? It's been a long process. If my history, remember, is correct, the financial planning tool came from the town hall renovation committee, and that wasn't part of their charge at all. Their charge was to focus on the town hall renovation. And somehow, during their deliberations over perhaps a year and a half, they convinced themselves that their job was to develop this financial planning tool and to push reset on everything that was associated with the town center. So I would like to just clarify that that history is correct, because that's my recollection, that that committee was the town hall renovation committee, and their charge had nothing to do with the financial planning tool. Thank you.
Anybody like to address that one?
I would like to speak to that because I was on that committee, and that's one of the reasons I decided to run for select board. One of the things that's really hard when you're trying to plan for something is if you have no idea what's incorporated. When we were looking at the town hall, in order to make decisions for the town hall, we needed to know, well, if we're going to be putting in a new septic, how does that relate to the town hall? And you can't dig up everything once and then do it again, it wastes money. And so we kept running into the same problem over and over. And as we were discussing, I said, I just need to know what do these effects have? How much does it cost? If we do this, what happens? And so it was very relevant to what we were doing with the town hall. And the town hall did go into different areas because things are related. So if the library needs something and the town hall needs something, they're separate, but it turns out we can actually buy one thing for much less or do that digging one time and it's less. That was relevant. We ended that particular group because we realized we needed to go forward in a much different way, and so that's why that committee is no longer working on that, but there needs to be a new committee that works on that same issue. One of the things that was important in the old CIP is that if you had a car, a police cruiser, for $20,000 or $30,000 today, it was still $30,000 20 years from now. And I don't know if you guys have bought cars recently, but they don't stay the same price. So I was very concerned that we weren't saving for the future in future dollars. We were saving in current dollars. So that's why that was relevant. But to me, that was very important, that we understood a bigger picture in order to make choices for the town hall. And I kept asking, why are we doing this when there's other things that matter?
Thank you. Mr. Kozowski, you may respond. However, I think you're getting a little far afield from the purpose of warrant Article 14, so I'm going to give you one more comment on it. I believe the reasons we put those things together are not totally relevant to the article in front of us.
Paul Kozowski, 46 Lamprey Lane. Mr. Moderator, I appreciate your concern, but I also realize that you respect history. And again, I think there is a relationship, and I think the voters need to be aware that there may be a relationship between the two. Now, in my following of this, it was the financial planning tool that pushed reset for the town center out to 9 years. And it put, at the end of the 9 years, it put the municipal office building. But I guess one of my underlying concerns, when this committee is formed, this new committee, are we pushing reset for projects that are in the queue? What happens to projects that are in the queue right now?
My thoughts are that that would be the business of this new board when it's formed, which is the point of Article 14. I'm going to let Mr. Keller speak, and then Ms. Long.
Karen Keller, 20 Chestnut Way. So, at least as written, pragmatically, probably most voters, this is a kind of a complicated article to really understand, to be frank, and what this charter is. I have a couple concerns. One is that it seems like, based on the past and seeing the same names get recycled in the same committees, it seems like, similar to the previous speaker's comment, I worry about outside influence that goes outside of this committee. I'd like to see this committee have a dedicated outcome, not be a standing committee forever. Maybe it's got a very specific goal and outcome, rather than turning into a de facto long-range planning or other things like that these things often become. And there's a lot of things going on in town right now. I'm just speaking, I'm a fairly educated voter, and I do probably more than most. It's complicated to understand, to be very frank. And even sitting here, I still don't really know what this board's actually going to do. So I do have strong reservations when we talk about those trust issues that, when you start connecting the dots, next thing you know, somebody says, oh, it's in our best interest to all of a sudden have a new library in town hall out of this committee. And that would be frightening.
Thank you. Ms. Long?
I'd like to ask that we move the question.
I had a hand over here, but we can't move the question because there was a motion made to amend. And so that motion has not been, and that's a subsidiary motion, and that's got to be dealt with before we can end discussion on this. So I'm gonna ask John Tappan to come back and clearly state his amendment so we can dispatch that before we move on to other discussion.
My motion to amend is to change the word expenditures to the word projects so that the language of the warrant article matches the language of the RSA that it references. If you want, I can read that.
Can you please read the entire article amendment with your change in it?
Article 14, to see if the town will vote to authorize the select board as provided by RSA 674:1, only 5, sorry. 1, to remove the planning board's responsibility for the town capital improvement program And 2, to establish, appoint, and implement a capital improvement program committee whose purpose shall be to prepare and amend a recommended program of municipal capital improvement projects projected over a period of at least 6 years to assist the Select Board and the Advisory Budget Committee in completion of the annual budget. Membership of such committee shall include at least one member of the Planning Board and may include, but not be limited to, other members of the Planning Board, the Advisory Budget Committee, the Select Board, town employees, and residents of the town of Lee. The Select Board recommends this article. Majority vote required.
Thank you. Is there a second? I see a second in the back of the room. I think Ms. Long. Would ask the clerk if we have this amendment and second recorded. And so we'll vote on the amendment. All those in favor of the amendment as stated, please raise your voter cards. All those opposed to the amendment, raise your voter cards. The amendment has passed. I'm going to ask one more person who when I point at somebody, that means I recognize them and I pointed at them, so I'm going to do this, and then we're going to deal with the motion to restrict further discussion.
Hello, Gord Lundquist, One Hill Road. Just wanted to speak in favor of the article and address some of the concerns that were brought up. As a member of the Budget Committee, right now we sort of paw and feel our way through that process without any input from the CIP. The first that I heard the CIP this year was at the third budget planning meeting, which was so far beyond the ability to take into consideration those numbers. I mean, it was presented when basically every decision had already been made. So the current process is broken. The whole reason that we have a financial planning tool is because financial planning tools available to the board are not there. And the board is free to pursue any tools it wants. The Advisory Budget Committee and the Capital Improvement Plan are both to advise the board. The board can choose to take that into consideration or throw it all away. Thankfully, the board respects a lot of what the ABC brings up, but it has no ability to take into account the Capital Improvement Plan because the Capital Improvement Plan is presented late, it's presented with mathematical errors, it's presented without a complete scope of the capital improvements that the town needs. So I think the board should continue to use the financial planning tool because the board should be aware of what's going on, have its own idea of our capital improvement needs, and we should have a committee that actually provides advice and does a check against the board. So the board should know what's going on, and an outside committee should be advising the board, and that's what this would do.
Thank you. Ms. Long, does your proposed amendment to end discussion hold at this time? Yes. And do you have a second? Yes. All right, we have a motion and a second to end discussion on this article. All those in favor of ending discussion on this article, please raise your voter cards. All those opposed, raise your voter cards. The discussion is ended. I would therefore ask that warrant Article 14 would ask the clerk to transfer that to the official ballot as amended. Any further?
I can go ahead and make a motion
Keep
to
going.
restrict further consideration of warrant article number 14.
All right. There is a motion to restrict reconsideration of Article 14 and a second. All those in favor of restricting reconsideration of Article 14, please raise your voter card. All those opposed, please raise your voter cards. All right, that completes our slate of warrant articles. And I would ask at this time, as moderator, if there's any further discussion to come before the legislative body. And I do have Mr. Bugbee.
I would like to take this opportunity to thank all of the staff, all of the volunteers, everybody that's contributed to the town of Lee in terms of this whole pandemic issue. Our staff has gone above and beyond the call of duty. We've tried to acknowledge them, and I would like to personally acknowledge all of their efforts. They've done an outstanding job, and I wish you to join me in a round of applause for all of them. Thank you very much.
All right, is this new business to come before our body?
Sort of. Yeah.
Okay, I'll let you proceed.
I just want to say what a great job our moderator has done tonight. And I want to nominate Don Quigley for president.
Oh, boy. Well, I don't take that as an official motion. Earlier in this body, there was a discussion started about a relative issue of an element of trust in our community. I'm not sure this is the right spot for that discussion, but I will ask the legislative body, do you at this time want to take up the discussion that was started by Mr. Keller and responded to by Mr. Carey on that issue? If so, please raise your voter card. If you do not care to take that up and want to leave them to discuss it in private, raise your voter card. Okay, that has passed, so that won't be an official recording of our meeting today. Although I do have to say that, we need every element of our community to speak on these issues. And as much time as we've taken to discuss some of our governance philosophy here today, I think it's very important that we listen to all opinions on this topic. So thank you very much for coming out today. Good luck on your driveways out there. And this ends the session, the deliberative session that we started for 2022. Thank you very much.